myself being involved with music again in this country, at uni, several other occasions, playing at the Africa Center in the early 70s, then gradually getting to be involved with the Africa Center as a promoter, forming a club called Limpopo Music, which was set consciously to promote African music in London and Europe. At that time, there was nothing like that as an idea. We consciously said to promote African music. I really want to emphasize that. You know, in the sense that here I was as an African in Europe, and understanding our music, our culture, more than anybody else, I felt it was fit for us to be at the forefront to promote our music because we had an understanding of it. Other things came into being. I'm just fast forwarding the discussion, the time. World music was created. I don't want to split heads here, but I've been a non-believer of the concept of world music. I thought, in a way, it was just there as a cultural penetration tool, if you want. People wanted to commodify music into a category that they will be able to market it. I remember when these terms were being thrown around. We, as Africans in London, I think the majority of people never really liked that term. We never really wanted African music to be associated with that. We really wanted to find a space to promote our own music with our own sensibilities of the music to the different crowds that come to consume it, if you want. I don't know. Now, on that one, I'll fast forward again. As this thing was being commodified into world music, there were other groups that came, people that I was involved with, like the Boomba Boys, who refused to be categorized in this category, who decided to go on their own terms, on their own musical definitions. They wanted their music to be called Jit music, which is a form of music that was played in Zimbabwe. And they were steadfast on refusing it to be called world music. I'll tell you what, they actually succeeded. Because as a group, in that category, which they refused to be marketed under world music, Jit music became a concept. It became something. If you went into HMV, if you went into Virgin Records, they had their own category. They had sold more records as Jit music, not as world music. So it kind of proved us right. I mean, for most of us, we do not agree with this term, that world music really is just a concept, just to market things, but in a way it does not advance African music, per se as African music. You know, so we're still seeing this concept being used all the time. I mean, people like Woman being the people who will really propagate this kind of concept. I think space should be given. I mean, I'm fast forwarding it again, ways forward, how we can get to where we are now, and how to promote our own music, how we want to be addressed. I think we should really address our music and our concepts of our music as how we live and define it by our own terms and sell it to the world as how we see it fit. I think this is a lesson to most record companies out there, that you need Africans to be involved, to partake, you know, in the marketing of this music. There's always these misconceptions of how Africans are not able to market their own things. We can sell our own products. We make them, we consume them, we know how to sell them, given the chance. We might not have the economic means to push it forward, which at one point we also need our governments support us, which is one thing governments in Africa don't see what we do as an industry. They don't look at it as something that is viable. I mean, look at the case of Jamaica. You know, it took Bob Marley to come here to record and popularize music of Jamaican origin outside of his country, for the government to realize it was a viable industry, to start building studios, to start taking the music seriously as a proper business concern. A lot of African governments today, they still do not take our music seriously. So again, this is, if you want another way of encouraging our music forward, is to encourage our governments, or force them if we can, you know, to take this industry quite seriously. There are lots of other areas we can look into in terms of the new technologies that are coming in. How do our audiences buy our music? With globalization, Africa has changed. There was a lot of piracies of music in Africa. People would release an album, it's pirated, the musicians themselves wouldn't make any money. But fast forwarding it again, now people can download the music and the money comes direct to you as an artist. You know, and I wonder how many of our artists there in Africa realize this, that there is now new ways of working, there's now new ways of selling music. It's no longer record companies that can go there in the forefront for you. You can do it yourself as an artist. You can make money yourself as an artist. So there's various ways. You know, in Zimbabwe, where I come from, there have been ways to try and counteract some of these things, that people have started pricing their CDs in a much more affordable way, that the ordinary people would be able to access CDs, buy CDs, and not buy overpriced CDs. I don't know, there's lots more to add, I just don't know where to start from. But anyway, having had this privilege, which I've had, to work with so many artists from Africa, I'm sure the story is the same all over. I've had the privilege to work with some of the best artists to come from Africa, Fela Kuti, Salif Keita, Baba Ma, and also been instrumental in pushing and promoting our music here in the UK. You know, people like Angelique Kidjo, from a nobody to somebody. An interesting story here was when Angelique Kidjo came to town. I remember calling one of the big record companies and I said, look, I have someone quite interesting. You know, I think you should sign him on. And I was told, no, we know what we're doing. So again, here is another concept of an African who works in the industry, who's trying to bridge gaps, who understands the music, who is actually saying to a record company, look, we can work together. We have an idea of our music, and this music is good. It happened in the case of Salif Keita too. A friend of mine who had to tell a record company, look, sign this guy on. And they were very reluctant. But when they did sign Salif Keita, it became this phenomenal thing. So we as Africans, we know our products. That's the point I'm trying to emphasize. We know it so well. Thank you. I think I'm being told to sign off now.
Thank you very much. That's Waladanga. I think you're actually advocating financial support for African music. That's what you're advocating. Thank you. Am I right in saying that?
In a way, yes, you are.
About myself, and then I'm going to talk probably as much about radio and platforms for marketing. I think it actually follows them quite well. I'd just like to know who, I know some of you, but lots of you, it's really brilliant to see a whole lot of new faces to me. Who here is an artist, a musician, performer? Wow, everybody. Who's a promoter? Broadcaster? Record label? Okay, so we've got a really good spectrum of who's in the industry. Who came along just because they're just intrigued? Good. Great. All right, so just a few words about me. You got a sort of introduction about a few things. I've been in this business a very long time, and I was reminded of that last night. So there was an absolutely amazing concert as part of the London International Festival of Exploratory Music Live series with Ami Koita and Rosie Conley here. Ami Koita came, it was her first UK visit for 23 years, and myself and another person who's actually no longer in the business, Alexa Dalby, we had a company called Half the Sky, and we found our niche partly from passion but also from importance to promote women in the world music scene and making a difference. So I hadn't seen Ami for 23 years, and that wasn't where I started, but it's something. I've managed artists, Taxi Pata Pata, Yabba Funk for a short time, Momo, who we will mention no more, Weird MC, Asif Ali, Fusing Naked Beats, and a number of artists across the range. I've written for various magazines, from folk groups, lots of online ones, forgotten the names, and I've done a lot of broadcasting and DJing. I'm also chair of Women in Music, because although at the moment the main artists I work with, Mosi Kundi, Joanna Gombe, are men, I'm also working with Caroline Shateen, who's a singer-songwriter. My passion is to bring women forward in the business, and I've worked with a lot of women in that respect. So, to work with me, and it's the same thing really, for getting yourself out in the marketplace, for being radio ready, for being career ready. You need to know what you're doing. You need to be good. You need to have a story about what you're doing. Have a story in your music, and have your story ready. You really have to be ready. Whoever you are, whatever your field, whether you're a promoter, a label, in broadcasting, an artist, so that whoever is going to help you, promote you, put you out there doesn't have to do all the work for you. So you need your product, you need your demo first, and eventually your recording. I think I'm really looking forward to what Nandala has to say about this. I've really watched your trajectory. You need to have your photographs, you need to have your schedule, you need to be ready to go. Really, really is important, because there are a lot of people in the field. I think the ones that go through that are very visible, they're not necessarily the best. They're the ones that have got their own cells together, they're the ones that have their backing, they're the ones that consistently deliver and who grow, and so that when you go to their performance, there's that thrill, there's that moment you think, I was there, and that was special, and no one else was doing that, and you take that away in your heart, and then you've got to be ready for the next time and the next time, because we're talking about markets and promoting and getting some staying power for artists. And I think the situation now where it's had to become really, really, really even more DIY than it was, I think we are actually seeing situations where we are able to see certainly UK-based artists more often. And so you can see a development, because I think that's something that's been pretty awful in our business coming and going is that we call it the train spotter element, where someone new comes and then someone else new, and that there isn't the development opportunity for the artist or the development opportunity for the audience gaining the ears and the language to listen to see an artist grow and develop. So there are so many different angles I could take this in, but one thing that when I was talking with Louisa is the area of radio that I work in. I've had a long running programme on Resonance FM called African Essence. I've worked on a number of RSL short-term radios, SOAS radio, way back. One of the first women's radio stations. I was also on the board of Women's Radio Group. So there was, a few years ago, there was quite a huge number of platforms, visible platforms, of world music radio, and some of that support was actually very much from the BBC. That has seriously shrunk. And even when the BBC was doing it, they were looking to a wider global market of artists and not giving that much encouragement to UK-based artists. Where the radio is now is quite exciting because almost anybody can actually do radio. It's just so many possibilities on the internet. And there is, in London, quite a few people are doing radio. It's mostly African-based more than the wider world music-based. But around the country, there are actually a number of people doing radio programs who've been doing them for quite some time. There's a brilliant guy in the Wirral, there's a guy in Liverpool, there's women in Manchester, Sheffield, brilliant people in the West Country. There's a brilliant person in, I think he's in Dublin, who, and they're very willing to receive music, and they're very willing to be approached. One of the things that I was doing, talking to people in these different stations, was to actually see if we could set up a network where all of us say, these are the artists in our area, this is what they're doing, and these are products that are out now, these are the favourite tracks, and to actually get between us a kind of, not a playlist, but a recommendation thing. So I have quite a lot of resources of people around the country who are doing that. So one of the things from this gathering is we can only talk so much here, but we're all as a resource, and GFMA and LTB are very good at drawing things together. So the thing is, afterwards, talk to us, take our contacts, have your own business cards ready, because what I'm saying is you need to be ready to communicate. So if somebody says, okay, you've got to have it ready to do. On my radio programs, what I love, and I'm not on air at the moment, I'm going back on air very soon. What I like to do is, I love new product. I love new product from new artists. I love exclusives that anybody else can have them. But I mean, your new thing, it doesn't have to be on a label. It doesn't have, just has to be your well-produced MP3 or your CD. And I when I do the interviews, it's with something that's coming up. It's always ask us. It's not just out of the blue. I'll say hi, but it's linked with something you're doing or something new you're doing. Because the other thing is, you can make your impact. You can put yourself forward. I'm talking about development. Again, it's your own development story. So each thing you do, it's got to make it has to work for the next thing. So even when you're working for your interview, your event, whatever, you've got to have your next thing in mind. because you're putting all your effort into getting the first thing done. Then what? You must have your next plan, whatever it is, some new story. And people who've taken an interest in you in the first place, they will look at you again. They will receive your next press release, your next email, your next information on your Facebook page, whatever platform, your Facebook, your Twitter, your Pinterest, your Instagram, your LinkedIn, your emails to the people that you collected at your events, your emails that you followed up very quickly. When they say in networking you should follow up in 24 hours, that's not always easy, but do follow up. Do say where you met the person, if it's someone like the people speaking or anyone here. And when you send your email list out, do remind them where they got your email, where you got that email from. So interviews is a big part of the radio that I do. Playing the new tracks, playing favourite tracks from before, keeping an eye on where the music came from. I love to occasionally drop in a mainstream thing that I like, because, especially when I'm DJing, because to say, well, look how easily your track went into that mainstream track, and look how easily it went into the next thing. That's not to educate you, that's to educate anybody from the mainstream that's listening, so they can see that, you know, it can be lifted. But just back to radio. When you go on radio, if it's your first opportunity, you might want to tell everything. Don't. What you need to do is, when you go there, is have maybe 3 or 4 points that you want to get across, and let the person who's interviewing you know that that's what you want to do, and because then they've got a shape for you. You know why you came to be interviewed, what you want to get out of it.
The viewpoint of an emerging artist. I've just recorded last year we recorded my first album, and we're launching it on Monday. And so really I just wanted to speak a little bit about my experience of trying to get myself out there in a world where there's so much noise, not good noise, but what I mean is where you're competing with so many amazing artists and there's so much music out there for people to listen to. How do you make yourself heard? And how do you get yourself noticed so that you're no longer playing those £50 gigs, but you're actually getting paid £150, £250 for a gig? And ultimately we all want to make a living from what we love. And that's what I want to do. Now, I was very fortunate in this whole thing, because I don't have a very sound, I can't say business is my forte at all, but I was very fortunate to have people who were in the band, and mostly the producer and bass player, Johan, who were just such a great source of support, but also had a very clear vision about the long-term goal of what we were aiming towards and the things that we needed to do in order to get there. If it had been me, I'd have been like, let's record, let's release, let's go, you know? And he was like, chill, relax. There's ways and means to do this. We need to take time, and we need to build buzz around you. And that's ultimately what we've been doing for the last couple of years. I also have to say that there are people who have been really, really supportive over the past couple of years. I've turned to everybody that I know who knows more than I do. Literally, I doubt there's a person out there who I know who is a promoter friend or someone who is involved in labels or running venues who I haven't turned to and asked a question. So I've taken advice from people who know a lot more about how this whole game works, really. It's been a very interesting session so far, and a lot of things have been raised, and so many topics that we could speak about. I'll just talk very briefly about WOMEX because I find it a very interesting experience. So WOMEX is the World Music Expo, the big trade fair, where basically everyone who's in the industry gathers on an annual basis and meets, and it's kind of the ultimate networking opportunity. Last year I went because it was in Cardiff, so it was very easy to get there, and I found it extremely overwhelming. I went with a plan, but really there's 3,000 people who go there, and you kind of like lost in this morass of people who know each other. It's very cliquey. You don't have a clue how you speak to people. Who do you talk to? How do you say, hey, I'm Nadia, and you should really listen to me because I'm great, and it's like people don't want to listen. They don't know who you are. This year was a lot easier for a lot of reasons, and partly because of the work that we've done in the time between last year and this year. The one thing I would say about WOMEX is it's a very interesting, eye-opening experience. It shows you who controls the industry, in my view, as an emerging artist. You go, and it's interesting, this thing that there are hardly any African promoters there. To me, it felt like it was an industry run by middle-aged white men, to be blunt. I'm very sorry if this is un-PC. To be blunt, this is what it feels like to me. I'm very sorry. But, which is okay, it's fine, it's the way it works. And the thing is that so it's not really a criticism. All I'm saying is that as an artist, we need to be aware of the industry, and we need to be aware of where we place ourselves within that industry and how we work with what's there. Really, for me, this is it. Is that there are things that we can use to our benefit, and there are things that we need to look at with open eyes and be like, okay, so this is the way that this particular part of the industry is working. Is this something I want to engage with? If it is, how do I work with it? And ultimately, hopefully, how do I turn it to my advantage? Anyway, so it's been 2 years of ups and downs. It's been very frustrating in a way because as a creative, you don't want to have to niche yourself. You don't want to have to package yourself. Your music is your music, it's your passion, it's your heart, and it is your expression of yourself. And what was very frustrating for me was trying to come up with the kind of paragraph of what I am and who I am. But I had to do it, and I had a lot of help with it, and I think I sent that paragraph to probably about 10 people, and ultimately I honed down what it is, and I think this is what Debbie was talking about. It's like, know what you're selling, have your story ready, know what you're going to say to people, because people want something to hook into. I think this is how I see it, this is how I understand it from the other side. Is that people need something for them to say, okay, they've never met you, they need to have something to even make them click on the link to listen to your music. And it's like, okay, so this is interesting, this is who this person is. So anyway, we had a kind of, well, thanks to Bihan, we had a long-term strategy. I'm just going to run through really quickly, based broadly what that was. The first was to build our fan base. And it's very interesting. I remember talking to a promoter at last year's WOMEX, and he said one of the things that I found, I think I have never gotten over, I found it so depressing. He said, before I even listen to someone's music, I look on their Facebook page, and if they don't have less than 800 likes, I won't even bother. So this was a wake-up call to me, because I was like, man, if this is actually how it works, fine, I'm sure there are promoters out there who actually do, listen to the music. But for me, it was kind of it really opened my eyes to how cutthroat it is, in a way. So really one of our big things was build the fan base. How do we do that? We just play as much as we can. And we don't only focus on London, we start playing outside. And there is funding out there for artists. The PRS has a very accessible fund called, I forget what it is, the individual grants. Exactly, there's help musicians that have a fund. And they're quite easy forms to fill in. They're not really that complicated, which is one thing I thought. I was really daunted before I opened it, and I was like, oh, actually, it's not that hard. So there's money out there, and I was of the belief that I started off with the fact that I was like, yeah, there's money out there, so let me try and get my hands on some of that pot, and we were lucky. And so we started playing out, and that helps not only to spread yourself wider than London, which has very limited venues, I think, but it also makes you, in my opinion, more attractive to promoters, because they see that A, you're pushing yourself, and you're working towards your own career, and also, oh, I've lost my train of thought, sorry. I got the 5 minute. Anyway, for me, what for me is important is not only does it grow your fan base, but it makes you more attractive because you look busy, and you are busy, which is always a good thing. And for promoters, it's good for them to see you busy, and it's good for them to see you active and investing in your own career and your own growth as a musician. So fan base was a big one. Promotion and visibility, know what you're selling. It sounds kind of cynical, but basically sell yourself. Use every tool at your disposal. And I have tried, I haven't yet done the Instagram thing, but I've tried to literally cover everything. Make yourself accessible. I've got a website, I've got Facebook, I've got myself on Music Glue, I've got myself on SoundCloud, bands in town, YouTube, MailChimp. Look professional and make it easy for people to find you. Have a good video, my weak point. Have a video so the promoters know what they're booking. Network. I was talking with this lovely lady, and I was saying to her, in my experience, people are just more likely to open an email from you if they've met you. And so if you can network, if you can say to them face to face, this is who I am, this is what I do, and if you then send them an email, they're more likely to be like, oh yeah, I remember this person, and I'll actually take the time to spend 3 minutes to listen to your SoundCloud, in my opinion. Womex is a great place for that. It requires investment, but you're investing in your own future, and so I think it's a worthwhile investment. If you have an album coming out, which is what we do, we've strategized around the album release, so we've built tours around the album to kind of hype it up. We hired PR. I've basically worn like 6 different hats in this process, but I was just like, man, I've made this album, I want people to know that it exists, and I feel like it's a worthwhile investment, spending that money on someone who actually knows what they're doing. And as a result of that, we've had, I mean, it's been amazing, but we've been very, very blessed, and we've got reviews coming out in kind of the major dailies and, you know, radio play, and it's again about like strategically investing in things that will bring you maximum returns for your creativity.
Thank you very much.